Thanks, Kevin. Well, good morning, everybody, and happy Father's Day. Today, I just won't be speaking to fathers, but I want to speak to mothers, grandparents, teenagers, disciple makers, in terms of all of you. I want to be talking about wisdom in the home and what hinders. We live in an age full of technology, and it's making its way into our homes and into our hands and into our heads, in which we are distracted, in which we are consumed. So how do we live wisely when all of our attention is being consumed in different ways? I was watching YouTube a couple weeks ago, and there's this security footage camera, and it was in the middle of a mall, and this lady was walking and texting. And she continued to walk and text, and suddenly she walked straight into a fountain and then fell right in. Another camera showed a guy who's walking and texting in a neighborhood, and off in the distance, you see this black thing playing with garbage. And he walks, and he's texting, he walks, and he gets about a foot away from a black bear, and then suddenly realizes that there's a bear right in front of him. What does he do? He panics, he runs. But are you walking with your head down? Are you parenting with your head down? Today I want to talk about what hinders us in our home. What's hindering our families? What's hindering our relationship with God and others? I have a picture on the screen, and times have definitely changed. You know, we go from a 3-year-old who's now switching on laptops and devices, but years ago, well, it was playing in the mud, right? But today, it's toddlers and tablets. Years ago, it was, well, just play outside, play with the earth, have fun. So how do we have wisdom in this modern age? Well, today I want to look at Proverbs. I want to talk about the need for wisdom to throw off what hinders, because things are hurting us and our families. So the three things are: we want to gain wisdom and understanding, we want to guard wisdom and understanding, and we need to know wisdom and understanding. So first, let's look at gaining wisdom and understanding. The book of Proverbs is a book of wisdom. It's wisdom literature. And the amazing thing about wisdom literature is that we desperately need it. It stands the test of time. Wisdom is knowing knowledge and being able to apply it to a decision. It helps us make good decisions. Someone said it like this: wisdom is lived knowledge. It's the ability to transpose what we know over here to a problem over there. So if we're going to get wisdom, we need to turn away from what wisdom is not. The Bible talks about two different types of wisdom. It talks about this higher level of wisdom. It's knowing God. The Bible also talks about this lower level of wisdom in which we live it out. It's the cause and effect of what we do. It's the reap what we sow. It's the honor your mother and father so that you live long. It's work hard so that you can prosper. But if you don't, you will become poor. It's the cause and effect of what God has put in place since the day of creation. But the higher level of wisdom is knowing God. It's trusting in Him. It's going to Him for this greater wisdom that spills down into this lower wisdom. They work together. And it's what we need in our home. So look with me at Proverbs 4:1. It says this: "Hear, O sons, a father's instruction, and be attentive, that you may gain insight." Notice that there's a paternal link between a parent who is telling their sons, their daughters, about how to live life. The children gain wisdom through hearing instruction. Now, you'd think this is common sense, but it's becoming a lost art in our home. Our parents are not teaching their kids. They're left to their own demise. But then the second thing that happens is a child gains wisdom by being attentive. That there's this earned relationship that needs to happen so that they listen to their parents. Now, one of the things that my wife pointed out to me just last week is that the lady is saying that she has this jar she puts as a reminder on her desk that she only has so many days with her kids. And so she's filled this jar full of marbles, and each marble represents 1 week. And every time 1 week goes by, she pulls a marble. Another week goes by, she pulls a marble. It reminds her that she only has so much time to instruct her kids, to invest in that relationship, because once they leave, well, time's up. And it's much more difficult to be able to pass on wisdom when you're not spending those special moments, day to day, face to face type conversations and situations. These are the building blocks in the home that gives our kids wisdom. But there's some staggering statistics recorded in a book that James White wrote. It's called Meet Generation Z. Generation Z is the group that grew up between was born in 1995 to 2009. So in other words, it's age 22 and down. He says this: currently, teenagers spent nearly 9 hours a day absorbing media in 2005. 9 hours a day. And according to teens themselves, mom and dad may care about the content of what they absorb, but not the time spent on media itself. And in fact, parents seem to be enablers. According to eMarketer, in the United States, kids are most likely to be gifted with a gaming device and TV between the ages of 4 and 7. And so now the results. Teenagers between the age of 12 and 17, 92% go online every day. But 91% go to bed with their devices. They wake up to the glowing screen. They go to bed to the glowing screen. So it's created a really difficult environment to pass wisdom on. Like, do we have our kids' attention? Or does someone else have it? James White says, this has made our kids more independent and self-directed than any generation before them. Like no other generation before, Generation Z faces a widening chasm between wisdom and information. Now, are our homes places in which kids are getting wisdom? Or are they just places in which we charge our devices? We come, we eat, we go back to our devices, go to bed, go to school, come back, go to our devices. Or are they places in which we interact, we share experience, we share love, and parents teach their kids how to live in a relationship with God and others? What has your kids' attention? What has your attention? The lower view of wisdom says that if we don't pass wisdom on to our kids, we are going to reap what we sow. It's the cause and effect of not doing something. In other words, we need wisdom. So next, we need God's wisdom. We gain wisdom from the mouth of God. So look with me at Proverbs 4:5, which says, "Do not turn away from the words of my mouth." What are the words of God's mouth? They're God's words to us, to humanity. They offer God's knowledge and his understanding. It's the trust in the Lord. It's the acknowledging him. And if we ultimately need to learn wisdom, we need to go to God. We need to learn his commands. We need to learn his correction. We need to learn his promises. We need to learn the word of God so that we can live it out. God is the ultimate source of wisdom. It's not something we find in a fortune cookie. Now, last year we were, as a family, sitting down for Chinese food, and it's actually my kids' favorite thing is the fortune cookie. Personally, I don't like them. So they crack those things open, and some of the things in there are hilarious. And one of them is like, a dream. Your dream is going to come true. And one of my daughters reads that. "Oh, Dad, what's the dream?" Or one of them is, "You're going to learn from your mistakes." "Oh, Dad, what's going to happen?" Wisdom isn't these just generalities that we learn in a fortune cookie. It's something higher. It's something greater. It's what we glean from the Word of God and then pass down to our kids. But there's this widening gap between how we live and the wisdom that comes from God. And we need to teach our kids to live effectively in relationship with God and each other. But the problem is we too are glued to our devices. We too are so busy that we're not taking the time to pass wisdom on. Andy Crouch says this: "The most important relationships are being crowded out by glowing rectangles." Andy Crouch wrote a great book that helps us process what does wisdom look like in the home. It's called The Tech-Wise Family, and I'm going to be using a lot of his solutions throughout the sermon because they're so good. But he says this: "We are stuffing our lives with technology's new promises, with no clear sense of whether technology will help us keep the promises we've already made. But I do know this: if we don't learn to put technology in all its forms in its proper place, we will miss out on many of the best parts of life." Now, I remember the day that the new iPhone came out, the very, very first one. I was a BlackBerry user before, but I remember sitting on a skiing chairlift, and I had this tech friend who was showing me this new iPhone. And he's like, "Hey, Steve, I can log into the bank I work for, and I can work right now. I'm logging hours." And so he would. we're going up the ski lift, and he's working away, sending emails, doing this. I'm like, that's amazing. So, of course, I got the new iPhone. So the next time we're skiing, look, we're both replying to emails, and then we go up the hill, ski down, and we're way more efficient. And that's really the promise of technology, is we can do more, faster, better. 10 years have passed by. Our phones can do even more. The cameras are better. I can tune my guitar. I can take measurements. I can even record, some people are saying, an album on their phone. But does that help us keep the promises that we've already made? This issue is becoming bigger and bigger, and it requires more and more discernment and wisdom. And it's not just the kids. It's the dads, and it's the mums. It's the grandparents even now. But doing almost anything is better than doing nothing. Andy Crouch says this: when we put technology in its proper place, it helps us bond real people together. It helps us start great conversations. When technology is not in its proper place, it disconnects us. It just consumes us. It connects us with people that we don't even see across the world, which isn't really a genuine relationship most of the time. But it's taking us away from the people that we're sitting across the table from the kids who are hiding in their rooms because they're on their device again and again. Do you feel the weight of what I'm talking about? This is coming from someone who loves technology. This comes from a guy who spends tons of time learning how to fix things, making them more efficient, gleaning what the next device could be. Because I love it. But it's taking me away from what is most important at times. It was really apparent when we had this conversation around the table, and my daughter was wanting an iPhone because her friends all have iPhones. Then it's like, oh, well, my friend has a YouTube channel. Oh, what does she do? Well, she wants followers. Really? For what? And it goes on and on and on. Years ago in a previous ministry, I got this email, and it was around midnight, and it was from this weird-looking email address, so I knew someone was either trying to hide their identity or prank me. And 9 out of 10 times, it was a prank. I was a youth pastor, and so you'd always get these funny text messages, funny emails of someone who's trying to mess with me. And at midnight, I was reading this weird email, and I was about to delete it, and I paused. The email said something like, "Hey, are you the youth pastor of this old church? If you are, this person needs help." Okay. So Megan, what do you think? She's like, I don't know, that's weird. I think it's a prank. I'm like, well, just to due diligence. Sure, okay, how can I help? Let's connect. Turns out a kid from across the world was reaching out for another kid who's been online every night and started to say that they wanted to end their life. Somehow my name popped up into the conversation. And this girl that I was working with was reaching out, but her parents had no idea. She'd be online late at night talking to everyone else but her parents. How? When I got involved and started counseling the family, I was asking questions, and one of the first things the parents said is like, well, no, it can't be my daughter. And the second thing is, well, maybe you should take her phone away or limit her time on the device. Oh, no, we can never do that. Who's the parents? Who's investing into our kids? Or are we just leaving them to their own demise? According to Guardchild, kids aged 12 to 17 are the biggest consumers of internet porn. 90% of kids age 8 or more have seen it, and 70% of them have sometimes encountered it accidentally because they have computers in their rooms. They have data access right in their pocket. And late at night, when parents are in the room, they can do whatever they want, and parents don't seem to care. We need to guard our kids because wisdom protects and watches over our families. Because wisdom is the ultimate possession in life. Because wisdom will exalt and honor God. Technology is more like a fire than it is just a good tool. Fire is also a dangerous tool, and it's difficult to work with. But so is technology. It requires skill, work, care, and effort. And we need to guard what our kids are doing with technology. We need to guard what we're doing with technology. Andy Crouch says this: life is difficult. In fact, if you do life properly with wisdom, life gets even more difficult. Why? Because saying no is hard. To radically recommitting ourselves to being what the family is all about is difficult. It takes effort. It takes investment. It takes us being present. It means sitting down around the table and opening up a Bible and talking about Christ rather than just watching TV aimlessly. It takes us saying, kids, no, you can't have the internet access just anywhere in the house. But we want to put it in a public space so we can see what you're doing, so we can help you find the right information. We are called to lead them and show them God's wisdom. And we need to remove the threats that keep us from living effectively in relationship with God and others. And kids may complain. They may get upset when you say no. Guess what? That's parenting. And you may even complain when you have to say no because it's really hard. But our kids don't need you to be their friend. They need you to be their parent. The next thing that we need to do is help our kids develop godly character. We need to choose character over screens. Look with me at Proverbs chapter 4, verse 4. It says this: keep my commands and live. God's commands protect, they shield, they guard. They help produce character in us. Proverbs 18:2 says this: a fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing a personal opinion. Doesn't that sound like social media? That a fool just expresses, here's what I think, but I don't really care what you think. I don't really care to understand wisdom so that I can apply it. But then Proverbs 4:11 says, I have taught you the way of wisdom. I have led you in the paths of uprightness. A person who is upright is someone who does what is right. They are honest. They are full of integrity. They are trustworthy. Our kids need parents who love them unreservedly, unconditionally. They are committed to them. They're committed to showing them Christ and growth no matter what happens. And someone said, as God produces a greater fortitude and capacity to deal with hardship, He does that through character. He does that by making us more like Christ. Because character is the image of who Christ is. And it's represented in us so that our kids can live in a difficult world. When we are changed by the gospel, that produces character in us, does it not? It helps us face who we really are. It helps us understand that we need to change, that we need God. But character also helps us have hope in suffering. So are we helping our kids have character? Are we making decisions that help produce that? Here's a number of godly characteristic qualities that we could be fostering in our kids. Helping them be bold, compassionate, content, creative, decisive, dependable, determined, diligent, forgiving, generous, gentle, grateful, hospitable, humble, joyful, self-controlled, responsible, and obedient. Is that the kind of thing we want to see in our kids? Is that the kind of things we want to see coming out of our own hearts? Technology is not just good. It's very good. But does it produce character in our kids? Does it produce character in us? Does it contribute something lasting, some lasting value to our family, to our neighbors, to our society in this broken world? Or is it just taking your attention off what really matters? This means we have to teach our kids from early on that we're not here as parents to make their lives easier, but to make them better. This means we need to tell them and show them that nothing matters more to our family than creating a Christ-centered home where all of us can be known, loved, and called to grow. That may mean making some radical choices of change. So next, we need to guard wisdom by shaping relational space in our homes. Proverbs 3:3 says, "When I was with my father, in the sight of my mother, he taught me." Notice the word with. That means face to face. That means you're interacting, you're sharing experience. That means that you're present. That we're not just teaching from a distance. Our kids are not just learning from an app. They're learning by doing with you. But I also like in the sight of the mother. This is a family thing, sharing wisdom. You're rubbing shoulders. You're going through the problems of life together at times. You're working on projects. Oftentimes we bring work home, and I do this. And I can even be sitting around the table and my daughters are having a conversation with me. And Maya called me out the other day. She's like, "Dad, where are you?" Oh, hey. I wasn't present. I was thinking about A, B, and C, staring out the window as my kids were trying to interact with me. Are you with your kids? Are you rubbing shoulders with them? Are you sharing life with them? That means that we need to make choices about the places in which we live. We need to help them develop character so that we can pass wisdom on. One of the things that Andy is suggesting in the book is that we shape a room just around building relationship. That when you walk in, you know that there's no devices allowed here. That this is a place in which we interact, we create, we have fun, we enjoy life in the home. And so there'd be musical instruments. So when kids would come, they would play and they'd make music. There'd be board games that they could pull out, throw it on the coffee table and have fun together and laugh and create memories. There'd be art supplies. And that kids would be able to invest and enjoy that together and post their work. And then people in the family would be like, great job. I love how you did this or that. That's the kind of environment that we need to create so that we can build a relationship. So that we can be with each other. So that we can enjoy each other. So that when times get difficult, we can pass wisdom on to our kids. I think what is happening today is that parents come home, they're tired, they go to a device. Kids come home, well, mom and dad are busy, they go to a device. And there's no more connection. Years ago, a family was asking for some help, and the issue was, my kids won't go to school anymore. Well, why? Well, they're playing video games for 12 hours a day. Really? I got a great solution for you. Pull the plug. No. We can't do that. They'll be upset. Really? I'll come pull the plug for you. The issue is that we were made for relationships. We need to create relational space in which we build rhythms into our lives daily, weekly, yearly, that we interact and we can know each other on a deeper level and know God. We are designed for a rhythm of work and rest. And rest sometimes means playing and making memories with your kids. Rest means really spending time with God so that when you're good with God, you can pass that on to your kids. To guard wisdom and shape relational space, Andy has some great commitments as a family, and so I want to throw those up on the screen. 10 tech-wise commitments. Number 1 is we develop wisdom and courage together. That's what we've been talking about. Number 2, we want to create more than we consume. Number 3, we are designed for a rhythm of work and rest. So 1 hour a day, 1 day a week, and 1 week a year, we turn off our devices and worship, feast, play, and rest together. Number 4, we wake up before our devices do, and then we go to bed before they do. I know families that are starting to put the devices all in one space so the kids can't take them to bed, so that parents don't take them to bed, so you're not tempted when you can't sleep to turn that on and keep going and going and going. Number 5 is we aim for no screens before double digits at school and at home. What they're saying is we don't give devices to kids under 10. You can play with that one. We use screens for a purpose, and we use them together rather than using them aimlessly and alone. Number 7, car time is conversational time. That's challenging when you're on a long trip. The kids want to watch movie after movie, but what happens is they miss out what's going on outside. Some of my best conversations with my kids, to be honest, are in the car now. When they're not on a device, they ask these amazing questions. They start to ask about God. God, Dad, why did God do this? Hey, this happened at school. The type of conversations that don't happen in the home happen in the car. Number 8, spouses have one another's passwords, and parents have total access to children's devices. Honestly, if you don't have your kid's password and you don't know what they're doing, please look. Number 9, this one's interesting. We learn to sing together rather than letting recorded and amplified music just take over our lives. Yeah, it's debatable. If you're a family that doesn't sing, that could be a disaster. If you're a family that does, it can be beautiful. It can be amazing. Number 10, we show up in person for the big events of life. The problem, as with so many short-term solutions, is that solving the immediate problem requires leaving a bigger problem unsolved. And it actually makes the bigger problem worse. And in parenting, when we need to make and set a different rhythm, it's hard. Most of the testimonies in the book say that it takes at least 2 weeks of saying no before the kids stop asking. Because habitually, they just want the device. It's easy. Kids crying, device. Dad needs to get work done, device. You see? But is that wisdom? Or are we actually making the problem worse? One of the testimonies in the book is the dad's daughter. And her testimony was at the end of years, her teenage years, she just fought this. And it was difficult for about a month. And after a couple of years, she said, Dad, that was the best decision we ever made. Spending time, creating memories, doing life together, and putting the devices aside. It's not just their family. Other families that are making these decisions are also reaping the benefits. That they're thriving again. They're talking again. They're becoming what God wants for family. Environments in which we can teach and pass wisdom on. And engage each other. Teach each other. Enjoy each other. So as you can see, in order to throw off what hinders, we need to hold on to wisdom and understanding. And lastly, in order to throw off what hinders, we need to receive wisdom and understanding. I know it's hot. I'm almost done. But we need to know the spring of life. Look with me at verse 23, which says, keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flows the springs of life. Keep your heart with all vigilance. In the Bible, Yahweh is described as the living one, the fountain of life. And the heart is described as the central part of who you are, your being, your will. And what comes in is what flows out. And so if we have environments in which we are just putting information in and not the wisdom of God, we don't know what's going to come out. The picture of wisdom is that our heart needs to be continuously focused on the right things. And that means that we need to connect with the living one. That we need to connect with Christ so that he flows out of us. So that right things, so that good things come from being transformed by him. When we are connected with God, we are connected to his wisdom, opposed to selfishness and evil and sin. The key thing is that we don't have the ability to transform our own hearts. We don't have the ability to continually work and fix all the problems in our own being, in our inner self. That out of that, if we don't deal with that issue, we won't be able to lead our families well. When we go to God for wisdom, we discover what fools we really are. And no matter how big our house is, it's not big enough to hide our foolishness. Our kids, our wives, they see everything. They know that you're not perfect. And that means we need to go to God. We need to say sorry to our kids, to our spouse, even our parents. They see our busyness. They see our laziness. They see our short tempers. They see how we avoid conflicts so that they can easily get what they want. They see it all. And we need to take our foolishness back to God so we can transform our heart. Because the thing is, a good decision won't transform your heart. You know, it's that lower wisdom. You can do a lot of good things. You can be a successful person. You can be smart. You can even have a great family, but your heart could be far from Christ. Spiritual wisdom begins with admitting that you need a Savior. You need to deal with your foolishness so that God can produce righteousness in you. So the way we know God's wisdom is through the gospel. It's the way that we receive living water so it can flow out of us. John 7:38 says, "Whoever believes in me, out of his heart will flow rivers of living water." So what's flowing out of your heart? What's flowing out of your home? We need changed hearts by Christ if we're going to lead well. Dads, moms, grandparents. So lastly, we need to know where to keep our eyes. Look with me at verse 25 to 27. It says, "Let your eyes look directly forward and your gaze be straight before you. Ponder the path of your feet, then all your ways will be sure. Do not swerve to the right or to the left. Turn your foot away from evil." And unfortunately, far too often, technology is at the center of our search. It's not Christ. I too find myself distracted, scrolling aimlessly, trying to find something else to keep my attention. And too often it's a substitute for Christ and leading in my family. So to ponder a path, it means to remove the stumbling blocks. It means to figure out how we fit into the big story that God has given us so that we can be in right relationship with Him. And out of that flows right relationship with others. So Hebrews 12:1 says, throw off what hinders. Ponder it. Think about it. Make some changes. J.I. Packer says, wisdom is the power to see and the inclination to choose the best and highest goal together with the surest means of attaining it. I love that. Wisdom is the power of seeing Can you see what's going on? But yet we have God's assurance that we can attain it through him. And when we do that, we become, with wisdom, more humble, more joyful, more godly, and more quick-sighted. I'm going to call up the worship team. So when we face conflict in our marriages, in our homes, in our families, in our friendships, we need to follow the way of wisdom. We need to stay committed. We need to stay faithful. We need to stay hopeful. We need to actually commit to seeking the face of God in our homes and bringing hope where there is no hope. And with the words of Andy, he says, please understand, I'm not saying technology is bad. In fact, I would say it's very good. But technology has made life easier, but not more joyful. The truth is that our children, just like us, will spend far too much of their time tethered to glowing triangles. So we need to throw off what hinders. We need to gain wisdom. We need to guard wisdom. We need to know wisdom. But the problem isn't the devices themselves. It's the parents. It's me. It's you. So are you walking with your head down? Are you parenting with your head down? The gospel shows us a different way. Let's stand and sing.